What's going on, everybody? Texan EDC Cave here. This video I'm going to be showing you how I've learned to take apart the Benchmade 940 and as well as a few tips and tricks I have for it. I just finished sharpening this knife, and so usually whenever I sharpen my knives, I always take them apart and clean the pivot area out just to get all the sharpening stone material and all that sludge out of the washers and the pivot area. So the tools you're going to need for the 940 are T6 and T10 Torx drivers. These are WeHa bits. I highly recommend you get a good quality set of bits. For the longest time I used, just cheap Chinese bits, and they would strip screws out, especially the T6s, because they're so delicate. And especially if you have a newer knife or a knife that you've never taken apart, a lot of times they'll use either blue or red Loctite, and you're definitely going to want a good set of bits. So before you do any of this, I highly recommend you buy some, as well as some tape. And that's really all about it. Now, I like to do all this on a plate or anything that you can keep all your parts. That way you don't lose anything, because there's a lot of tiny screws and springs that you might lose if you're not careful. So first thing I like to do is be cautious that you are dealing with a sharp object. So I always like to tape the blade off, and I'm just using painter's tape. You can use whatever you want, just nothing special. Just get it and just cover the blade portion. There we go. And cool, now I have it taped off. I'll cut the excess off. Okay, so now we're dealing with a safe blade. First thing I like to do is remove the pocket clip on the 940. You're gonna have 3 T6 drivers. It'll either be on the left or the right hand side, depending on if you're a left or right-handed carrier. And this is going to be a two-parter, so this first series is going to be on how to disassemble it. I will pause the video, clean it, and then by the time part 2 comes around, y'all will see how to assemble everything. All right, so got your pocket clip removed. Next, I like to start with the pivot. So switch out from your T6 over to your T10. And this one is Loctited, so there's going to be some resistance in the threads. That's okay. And to get the actual pivot out, you're going to want to take the pressure off the pivot itself. So just pull back on the axis mechanism, and with the end of your T10, you can push on this black ring right here that's part of your pivot. Push it in a little bit, and then you're going to see it sticking out from this side. And once you remove this, your blade will fall out, so you want to be careful. There it is, and it is D-shaped. I don't know if you can see that too well. It is D-shaped, so it'll only go in one direction. And this is where your blade will come out. Sometimes it comes out with the washer, sometimes it'll stay on the handle. All right, so this time it looks like they're gonna stay on the handle. You can see the washers are in there. See if I can kind of turn the brightness up. No, I can't. But yeah, there's your washers. Let's move everything out of the way. Here's your blade. This is what the pivoting area of the blade looks like. All right, switching back over to your T6. We're gonna start with, well, I like to start on this side, which is basically the side that's got the most screws showing, 1, 2, 3, 4. This side will only have 2. And let's start with taking the back spacer out. So the back spacer out is held on by these 2 screws. And just slowly and carefully remove these. Also, you always want to try to apply a downward pressure, especially on these T6 screws. Downward pressure, and try to keep the bit as straight as possible. You don't want to be canting this like this, or else you will strip out your screws. And don't worry about knowing which screw goes where. I will cover that in my second video. So now that those 2 screws are out, this one's kind of sticky, but there's your back spacer. Beautiful anodized titanium. Very nice. Next, we'll start with the actual liner screws. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. These are very short, and if you're going to lose any screw, it's probably going to be these if you're not organized. See how short these screws are? Yeah, very short. And the last one. There we go. And then your scales will simply just fall apart. You can see all the crud that accumulates in there from months, I guess, because I've taken this apart within the year, but just months of carrying all the oils and pocket lint and dirt. You can actually see there's a little bit of rust, surface rust forming right here. That's normal, I always see that. You can usually just wipe it away, and then I'll put a thin coat of oil on it. So now that you've taken apart the 2 scales, here are your liners and your access lock mechanism. Here's those springs. Yep. There's your stop pin right there. It's not really a press fit, but it's kind of a press fit. It's kind of loose, kind of not. And there's your 2 washers. So what you're gonna do is you can grab these with a pair of pliers or your fingernail. I like to use a pair of pliers just so that they don't go flying. And let me get my handy dandy Leatherman out and just grab it. And you can see that this spring has a little hook on it. This hook will go right into that groove. So you just want to pull it out of that. Do that on both sides. Once you do that, the spring simply just wrap around your access bar. So pull on it from the bottom up. And there's one access spring. This really isn't hard, guys. Most people have trouble with the access springs, or they get scared because there's some springs in there. There's nothing to be worried about. This is pretty simple, and I'll show y'all an easy way to put this back together. Once that comes off, you don't have to take the springs off to get this bar out, but I like to because I'm going to clean the whole knife anyway. You can just slide the access bar back down into this wider opening, and then there's your access bar. Just one piece. And these simply just pull apart. And there's your 2 washers. I usually don't take up the stop pin. You can if you want to, it's up to you. But this is really as far as I go. I'll take off these washers and clean everything out with some alcohol, oil everything up, and then next time I make this video, it'll be for assembly. Thank you guys for watching.